How you doing? IB Nation Sports Talk is up and rolling with Vince D'Addario. I'm Sean Stiers. Glad to have you with us here today. I'm a little bit, man, I've been dragging today. I
Yeah?
made my usual pot of coffee in the
Mm.
morning, and my wife drank, I think, like twice as much as she usually does. And so I think I'm paying the price here later on. Didn't get enough
She
caffeine this morning
she took
to
your
rev my
coffee.
tank. Yeah, exactly.
I get it. I get it. Well, it's Teacher Appreciation Week, so it's pretty great at school this week because they're all kinds of goodies and they fed us lunch today. So like I'm feeling great. Took a little extra for tomorrow's lunch. Put it in my little fridge in the office.
Nice.
So it's good. It was good. Yeah.
DT asking how Jesse's ankles are. I haven't heard from we texted once today.
Ankles.
He did mention he's playing in an adult basketball league. And
Oh, I heard him say he wanted to get some shots up because he
yeah,
was going to get kicked out of the show at one point. And he's like, I'll just go early and get some shots up. I'm like, get
yeah.
some shots up. Like, he played sports in high school and baseball, football, basketball was not a Jesse Steyer sport. I
No,
just, I have a hard time visualizing that.
didn't play the hoops. He thinks he's a hoopster, but he said last night, he's like the Draymond Green of the Cleveland YMCA league, apparently. So
So he just uses all of his fouls, is what you're saying.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Exactly. He said he's averaging 5, 5, and 5 across the board. So, and 5 fouls included.
Yes. I like it. I like
so,
it.
so he's got that going for him. Well, hit that like button. It is mailbag night. Get your questions in tonight. We do appreciate it. Tommy says he drags every night. Well, you're out there gallivanting around the country.
Seriously.
Tommy,
I couldn't do
right
it.
now, like
Tommy
no.
does. There's no way.
That's what my dad did. I think
Yeah,
I
that's
think you knew
right.
that. Like
I
my dad
did.
did that for however long, from the time he went early 70s until about 5 or 6 years ago, something like that. Coast to coast, around the country, driving the
Man.
truck and paying the bills and all that
Yeah.
good stuff. And he finally retired a few years ago.
Finally
So
hung it up.
yep, that's right. But that's just, there's some drives I can make, but then, I'll sit there, like when I start nodding a little bit and I'm like, how did my dad do this for
Yes.
like 10, I don't know what, because, they do have restrictions on how many
Sure.
hours a day you can drive and you're supposed to rest and all that kind of stuff. But I
Still.
just can't imagine.
Well, you make that drive back and forth to Kansas all the time. And that to me still seems long. Like that seems like a long haul.
We've gotten used to it by now. There are stretches that are tougher than others, but it's like, to me, it's like it's segmented enough where like you go west for a time and then southwest for a time and then back to the, so it's like it breaks it up at least a little bit.
It's true.
We've got the places that we know we're going to stop and all that kind of stuff,
Good point. Good point.
so many times at this point. So yeah, a couple little notes to mention. Did you see TaRiq Bracy got the rookie minicamp invite from the Houston Texans?
Good.
They announced today. So
good.
I've been thinking about him a little bit.
Yes, I was actually kind of worried because at times last year he was the best defensive back that Notre Dame had.
Yeah.
And the fact that, okay, he didn't get drafted. Okay. But I was expecting him to be one of those guys that got the undrafted free agent contracts, right away, right at the end after the draft is over. You know who those guys are, like, what Groupie got one and a couple of other guys got one like right away as soon as the draft was over. I thought he would be in that mix. I am shocked that it took 4 days for him to sign with a team. I really am shocked. But here's the thing. It would not surprise me if he ended up making a roster. Because
Me too.
I think he can help out a team on special teams. I think he could be a nickel. I think there's a lot of things that he can do. Good for him. I am happy to hear that he was able to sign with a team.
I'd be shocked if he's not at least on a practice squad someplace when things start up because of what you just mentioned. I agree. He's versatile enough. He's maybe a little bit more undersized than they'd like, but
sure.
I just feel like he's got a good chance to at least be on a practice squad and then kind of keep proving himself and see what happens. And you never know. Once you're on a practice squad, like you can end up being signed by other teams as well. You get a little bit of film,
Absolutely.
stuff like that. So glad to see that that happened for TaRiq Bracy. And then Micah Shrewsbury stays busy.
Yes, he has.
Keeps signing these high school guys, which is good. He's got another incoming freshman, Logan Imes, out of Zionsville, Indiana, down by Indianapolis. He is a combo guard, 6'4", solid 3-point shooter. He can hit like 34% of his threes his senior season. But, he's a 3-star, a little bit more of a project, I think. But still, you need some capable bodies at this point.
You need bodies, man.
Yes. It's the third high school guy in the last 3 days, and it's the second in a row that was going to play for him at Penn State. And so he gets Imes to come here after he got the forward Kerry Booth yesterday. And then they also, I don't know if you saw this, they announced a couple staff guys.
Okay.
Grady Eifert, Tyler's brother, who played basketball at Purdue, is going to be Micah Shrewsbury's player development and recruiting coordinator.
Oh.
And then Trey.
That's a different spot.
I know. Trey Whitted, assistant to the head coach. So I don't know what exactly that means.
Is that a coach or secretary?
Not sure. That's exactly what I was thinking. What is the assistant to the head coach? Aren't they all assistants to the head coach?
I mean, that's kind of what I thought, but all right. Cool.
Yeah.
No, that's good. It's starting to wrap things up. I did see that I don't know if it was an official announcement. I thought I saw on Twitter that his son, officially committed to Notre Dame or whatever as well. So starting to fill out the roster, which is good because they certainly need some bodies. They can almost scrimmage at this point, which is awesome.
Getting closer.
Yeah.
So they got one transfer, 3 incoming freshmen to go with 3 scholarship guys. Zona, how do you say his name? JR's last name?
Knesny. Yeah.
Knesny.
I believe that's how you say it anyway.
Yeah. Knesny, Zona, and Sanders are the 3 holdovers in terms of scholarship guys. And then they got a walk-on as well. So I'm sure they'd still like to add at least, one more transfer if they could, if not 2. But
right now on the roster, they still only have 4 guys listed on the roster at the moment. So I'm sure they're waiting for those guys to sign and do all of those fun things.
I mean, you literally might have to, go find a D2 guy, to transfer in and just to fill out the roster, to give you some bodies.
Well, they may be bringing in some walk-ons and, there might be some opportunities, maybe this year for some guys that are already on campus that, maybe were good high school players and, they just need some bodies. And hey, maybe you could even get a year of school paid for. You know what I mean? Like, it could be a good opportunity for somebody, not somebody that you're going to count on the floor, but somebody that you can count on in practice, Hey, we'll give you a 1-year scholarship. Come on, help.
And that's, like the women have the advantage of they can go get guys who played basketball in high school and they can be their practice players, but it's a little bit tougher, I think, for men to find, quality that they can bring in like that, walking around on campus.
I think they need to go to the women's practice and see what these guys have.
Yeah. Father David wants to know if Jesse has any eligibility left.
He's got all of his basketball eligibility
That's
left.
right. That's right.
I mean,
never played basketball. So. All right. Let's get to some questions. There have been a few.
We got some in here
queued up. Let's start with this one. Actually, you know what? Before we do that, I wanted to. Where's this other one? Lenny threw this up. They may have explained this in the chat. He asked what happened to Sean Davis. He's never on anymore. That is the Lucky Lefty show where Sean Davis is. The Lucky Lefty show. And of course, he does like post-game show and stuff like that. And he might start doing some more during the summer. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like because you and I were just talking before the show started that, there might be shaking some things up a little bit for the summer months and stuff like that.
Well, and I think he'll definitely be on the post-game show once the season rolls around again. Him and Brian were doing the RT whatever initials. I always get it wrong.
RTFC, is that it?
Something like that. They were doing that show on Saturdays. Yep. There's like recruiting, blah, 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 blah. So I wonder if he'll be doing that. But I think right now he's focused on the Lucky Lefty podcast, and he's a pastor as well. So, I mean, he's got a day job. He's got things going down. So love it when Sean's on the show. Don't get me wrong. I love having Sean, and I love his raw emotion after a game. That might be my favorite, Sean. RTCF.
Right.
There you go.
RTCF. I got the F and the C turned around, but I was close. We were both close. Not quite. Okay, so from Salty, if Notre Dame gets to the playoffs with Sam Hartman, what are his odds of winning the Heisman?
This is a really good question because I think we can all agree that the Heisman Trophy goes to the quarterback, most likely, of the best teams in the country. And if Notre Dame makes the playoff, I think Hartman has a really good shot of being invited to New York. Now, winning the Heisman, that's a different conversation, obviously. I think he would definitely get an invite because that means Notre Dame is probably 11-1 at worst, right? Because I don't see them making the playoff at 10-2 unless there's some craziness going on.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the landscape of college football, right? Let's think about who has the possibility of winning the Heisman this year. Caleb Williams, I guess, could potentially. He won it last year. I feel like there's a stigma. Excuse me. I just went to the eye doctor yesterday with my daughter. There's a stigma about the two-time winning Heisman Trophy thing. Like
It's only been one.
I don't see that right
the only
from Ohio
one.
State.
Yep.
I just don't see that happening again. I just think they won't vote for him, period, because of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he may get invited, but I don't think he's going to win. Look, Tim Tebow won it as a sophomore, never won it again. Like, that's craziness. So I don't think he wins it. So who else is out there, right? I think Sam Hartman. I think it's a pretty wide open field, honestly. So his odds of winning it, not only is Notre Dame going to have to make the playoff, but he's going to have some pretty good numbers. But I would put his odds like if you're in the seat in New York, you got a shot at winning it. So I think he's got a shot.
I mean, Williams won the Heisman last year. They didn't even make the playoff.
That's a good point.
In most, like these days, I mean, well, as I talked about on yesterday's show, you're either an Alabama player or you're a Lincoln Riley quarterback. That's who's winning the Heismans. Those two coaches have 7 between them since I think it's 2009. I think that's when Mark Ingram won his, So you get to the playoffs in a 4-team field in this last year of the 4, and we'll talk about the expanded field in the format, by the way, coming up in rapid fire a little bit later. But you get to the playoff in a 4-team field, as the quarterback of Notre Dame, I would think you're going to have a really good shot. So I'd give him like a 75% chance, I think. Okay. Is what I would put it at. Like if I'm putting some odds. So I don't know what that comes out, what to 1, but we need Jesse for that one. But I'd give him about a 75% chance because like you said, I think he's at least going to New York City.
Yeah.
If Notre Dame is in the playoffs, because it's not going to be a system where he's a game manager and
right.
Like he's just one of 11, as they used to like to say. He's going to be a quarterback, I think, who's putting up some pretty prolific numbers if they're in the playoff this year.
Well, and look, I go back to this all the time. Ian Book wasn't a finalist for the Heisman Trophy, but he got votes for the Heisman Trophy when he threw 16 touchdowns or whatever it was, right? Like a ridiculously low number of touchdowns, but they won a bunch of games, and he was the Notre Dame quarterback. He got votes for the Heisman Trophy. I guarantee you Sam Hartman will throw more than 16 touchdowns this year. He's going to get votes. It just depends on how good the team is, et cetera, et cetera. But you're right. He's not just one of 11. He's not. And Notre Dame has a chance to have a really good offense because Sam Hartman's pulling the trigger. A lot of talent around him, but there was a decent chunk of talent around Pine last year, et cetera, going back, right? So they have an opportunity to be really good because this number 10 is pulling the trigger for this offense. So, yeah, he's got a great shot.
Yep. Josh wants to know, are you guys as surprised as I am that it seems the offensive recruiting is going way better than defensive? Do you think that's because Freeman knew he needed to spend more time on that side?
Number one, I think the offensive recruiting is going really well because they got CJ Carr as their quarterback. I mean, are we talking about the 24 class? Because you need a dynamic quarterback. When you get a dynamic quarterback, you get dynamic players on offense. I mean, it really is that simple.
Yeah.
So they got CJ Carr in the mix. He's their lead recruiter on offense, and he's bringing in dudes. They're struggling on the offensive line right now. If we're being honest, we need some better offensive line guys to say they're going to come to Notre Dame, but wide receiver, running back,
which is weird because that's always been
we're in like
the
bizarro
easiest
world.
position to recruit. I know,
but I mean, to me, it really comes down to the fact that they have CJ Carr at quarterback, and he is a dynamic recruiter.
See, I guess I just kind of look at it like I feel like last year, you obviously got some really good wide receivers last year. Some of that has to do with who you hired as your coaches. You don't have Dell Alexander anymore. You've got a guy who's actually out there putting in the work to recruit the position. So that helps. Chancey Stuckey,
absolutely,
obviously. And the other thing, like they kind of loaded up a little bit more defensively last year, and that's what I was starting to say before I kind of went, well, yeah, but they got some really good receivers in this class as well. But and that's so maybe it's just kind of balancing out this year because you got some of those linebackers and stuff like that, and now you're back on the offensive side of the ball.
And there's still some big defensive fish out there that Notre Dame is in the mix for. They have to close on them, obviously, but there's still some pretty big fish out there that I think Notre Dame has a pretty good shot at. So, this 24 class is a top 5 class right now, and you need it on both sides of the ball in order to be that.
Yep. 7 Mules. How did the guard position shake out on the offensive line this spring? What's going to be the biggest things that you're looking for headed into fall camp?
So the guard position, I think basically, in my opinion, if they were playing Saturday, if there was a game coming up this Saturday, you got Billy Strouth at left guard, and I think you've got Kristofic at right guard. Now, to me, the spring game specifically showed that Rocco is a lot closer than I thought that he was, and that's awesome because that means there's going to be maybe some competition going into the fall. But I think it's between those three. And at the end of the day, I still think that Billy Strouth and Andrew Kristofic are going to be the starters when it's all said and done. And I think, if Rocco pushes to get on the field, then maybe he gets into a rotation, for example. And I think that would be fine. Look, the last time Notre Dame won the Joe Moore Award, there was a rotation at right tackle, right? Mm-hmm. It can be done, and you can still be an elite offensive line. So I could see that being a possibility. But right now, I think he is the best backup at guard, and the other two guys are going to start.
Yeah, I agree. I think Strouth has left guard locked down, and Kristofic is definitely ahead of Spindler right now. But as you said, I don't think Spindler is necessarily that far behind, but Kristofic is definitely a lot more experienced, and maybe that plays into it a little bit as well in terms of where he is. But yeah, I think that if there's a battle, it's on the right side to see if Spindler can, at least make it closer and maybe push Kristofic a little bit. And that would be intriguing as well if he could kind of force himself into a little bit of a rotation over there.
Because I think God's gifts, if we're going that route, right? I think Rocco has better gifts than Kristofic. Kristofic's been around the block. He's the veteran. He's the guy that is going to be in the right spot at the right time. I think he works really well with Fisher on his right, Carell on his left. I just think that the combos that come, I think that he does a really good job with all of that. One-on-one, he's not very good. I mean, he gets beat in one-on-ones. How often is a guard one-on-one? That just doesn't happen that often. It's a lot of combo stuff. It's a lot of moving around. Right now, I just think Kristofic is the one that they trust more than Rocco at the moment. That could change over the summer and into the fall. But if I was a betting man, I would say Kristofic gets the nod to start.
Yes, totally concur. I'm looking for some other questions here. Benjamin wants us to come out. Bold predictions.
Just start pulling up those. Football. Just start pulling up these Bernie ones. Bernie's got some serious bold project. I'm going to pull some of them up here. He says,
"Okay,
see Hartman, Estime, JT, and Morrison all finalists in New York for the Heisman. I don't think it's going to be an all Notre Dame.
That would be
group.
A little tough.
It'd be impressive.
A little tough.
There was another one. Let's see. Hartman, about 95% favorite to win the Heisman. If he stays healthy, he's going to put up 60 on USC. That's a bold prediction.
Very bold.
That qualifies as a bold prediction.
Very bold.
For sure. Honestly, this is a bit of a bold prediction from Anthony Solomon. 4,000 yards and 40-plus touchdowns put Hartman in New York. Yeah, absolutely that puts him in New York.
Yeah.
No question about it. I think those are some pretty lofty numbers.
Assuming he doesn't have like 20 interceptions or something.
Right.
15 interceptions to go with it. But
true. But that would be
if he's got those numbers, worst case they're losing one game, I think. And in that case, you're probably in the playoff, like we were talking about. And again, in that case, because you're the Notre Dame quarterback, and Hartman's got a little cachet built up. He's a known commodity. People know who he is. People in the ACC know who he is already.
Yep.
So you've and that's like, whenever you look at Heisman voting, it definitely goes regionally in terms of who knows you, who's familiar with you, and all that kind of stuff. 4,040. Yeah,
that's bold.
He's gonna be there. I don't know that he hits. Like, which of those two numbers do you give him the better chance to hit? 4,000 or 40?
40.
For me, it's 4,000.
Oh,
really?
See, there we're different. We're different. I could just see some of these guys maybe taking a long one to the end zone, that kind of a thing. The only issue I have with the yards is I just think that the run game is going to be. See, that's what. Could Sam Hartman be that guy? Yeah, he could if he was the primary weapon. They are going to lean on the run game. Like, these guys are going to get carries and touches, and it's going to run the clock. And I just think that the run game is going to take away from some of those numbers. I think he's going to be incredibly efficient. I think his efficiency numbers are going to be really good. I just don't know if he's going to be able to get that high because of the run game.
I'm going to have to go back and look at like some of these other quarterbacks, like hang on just a second. I'm gonna try to pull. I was gonna say I'd like to see, like, for example, like some of these quarterbacks that hit some of those big numbers, because we don't see them around here. What are the rushing totals looking like for those teams? Like, I'm going back right now and I'm looking at USC last year, and USC averaged 335 passing yards per game, and they averaged 171 rushing yards per game. So that's still pretty healthy.
Yeah. I mean, in 13 games, he would have to average 307 yards a game. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's one bowl game. And he would have to average 3 touchdowns. So 3 touchdowns and 307 yards would get him 40 and 4,000.
Yeah. So like Caleb Williams threw for 4,500 yards last year. And they still had Travis Dye rushed for a little under 900 yards, 891. Austin Jones ran for 727. Williams himself ran for nearly 670 yards. So they still had a pretty healthy rushing attack, even throwing for 4,500 yards. And that's kind of what I think. I think that you're still going to run the football. It's not like you're going to stop running the football, but it's just that you're going to hit bigger chunk plays downfield in the passing game, and then you're going to continue to run the football. So that's why I think 4,000 is the number that I'm looking at, and it could take away from some of the touchdown passes, because then, like, you get down inside the red zone and you pound it in with Audric Estime and that kind of stuff. So that's the direction I'm leading.
Yeah, the touch I saw from Sam Hartman in the red zone with some of his throws in practice and in the blue gold game, etc. They're not always going to pound it in. I think they're going to throw it a decent chunk. I think they're going to give him some opportunities to throw some touchdowns.
And that just sets each other up.
100%. I think they're going to be able to pick their poison. Honestly.
Yeah, exactly. Knowing you can do one sets up the other. And that's the beauty of having this kind of quarterback that they haven't had before.
And somebody made a good point about
get this quarterback.
Absolutely. And somebody made a good point about, I mean, this is a little bit of an exaggeration. Where was it? Here it is. Irish Chi-Town. Hartman could easily throw for 7 or 8 touchdowns in the Tennessee State game. I think ND will hang a real crooked number at halftime on Tennessee State. it's possible that they hang a crooked number. I don't see him throwing for 7 or 8 touchdowns because I don't think he's going to have 7 or 8 series in that game, if I'm being honest. But
so you think he's out by halftime is what you're saying?
I do. But the point, I agree with the point that there are going to be games where he could throw 4 or 5 touchdowns and therefore doesn't, and you can still average 3 throughout the rest of the season and hit the 40 mark. You know what I'm saying? Like, that is a definite possibility. You put up a couple crooked numbers, like Ian Book did that one year, right? He threw all of his touchdowns against the crappy opponents, and that got his number up into the 30s. And then he didn't do anything against the good opponents. Remember that? Right. It was all against the garbage opponents.
He threw 15 because I used to talk about it all the time. He threw 15 touchdown passes against the 3 group of 5 teams that they played that year.
Exactly. Yes. It's where the chunk of his numbers came from. And so I could, and I'm not comparing the two, but I am saying he could put up some crooked touchdown numbers against some lesser opponents and still hit 2 against a good opponent like an Ohio State or a USC or whatever, and then it averages out that he could hit the 40.
Yeah. It's interesting kind of thought experiment.
Yeah, it is. It is. It really is. Right, so I think Notre Dame's gonna have a better running game than USC had, and they still average 171 yards or whatever a game.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Like, yeah, exactly. I think they're gonna have a much better running game than that. And but I think we're gonna see a lot of offense is the bottom line.
I think we're gonna see a lot of points.
I don't think one's gonna, especially because of the fact that you do have Tennessee State and MAC and some of those other schools.
Notre Dame's never had a situation like a Tennessee State on the schedule. So who knows what that's going to make things look like offensively, where, Alabama plays 2 or whatever, like it's going to be a little bit of a stat stuffer. And I'm curious to see how Marcus Freeman handles that with it being an HBCU and, the big deal of Eddie George coming, like all of that. Like, do you really put 70 on him? Like, is that how you really want to go about it? I don't think so. But you could run it between the tackles and still score, and that's not really your fault. So, again, it's going to be fun to watch. I think you're going to see it's going to look like a pinball machine with all the lights and the blinks and bing, 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 bing. It's going to be great.
It better. Salty wants to know, what are the positives and negatives of losing Diggs, Buckner, and Collie to the portal? He said Brian and Ryan had their opinions earlier.
Well, I'm sure they did. Well, I know we're going to talk, but you and I are going to talk about Diggs later on,
right?
So I'm going to save my comments on Diggs for rapid fire.
Okay.
Obviously, the positives.
That's a good point. We are because we've got a Logan Diggs question to lead off rapid fire.
So. Right. So I want to hold off on that. Now, Buckner. There's no positives about Buckner leaving from a Notre Dame standpoint. There's just not. There's no positive. I'm sorry. There's no positive. The negative is obviously that you don't have a proven number 2. You don't have a kid that was projected to be the starter for next year. Because I think at this point you have to go to the portal next year to get a quarterback. I just do. It's all negatives. Prince Colley's a little bit different because Prince Colley was not slated to start. Like, he was not going to be a big factor from a defensive standpoint. Now, he probably would have still been a big factor from a special team standpoint. Obviously, he blocked a punt and he took one in for a touchdown. He was a special teamer, right? But he was falling down the depth chart and getting passed up by some guys. And so I don't think it's a huge negative for Notre Dame that he left. I think it's a purely positive thing that he left for Prince. I think he's got an opportunity to go to a different school and start and get more playing time. Again, that's what happens when he got over recruited, right? And he needs to go someplace else. I have no problem with him leaving. I really don't. I think it's a good move for him.
Yeah. And is there a positive for Notre Dame that he left? Just the fact that if you're going to spin it, I guess, a little bit, the fact that you've got so many young, talented guys that they were, that's part of why he was having a hard time getting higher on the depth chart because it wasn't necessarily even the veterans in front of him. They played a part of it, but it was also the guys who he was theoretically ahead of last year who had already caught up to him. And so to me, it says that you've got a lot of young talent at that position, something that we knew already. And that played a big, as big a part of it as anything. And then, like you said, the fact that now he gets to go and have a chance to play somewhere is a big thing as well.
Absolutely.
I'm kind of surprised we haven't heard an announcement in terms of where
we all kind of heard he's going to go to Vanderbilt, reunite with the guy who recruited him, which makes a lot of sense. I don't see the positive for Tyler Buchner transferring to Alabama. I don't see that as a positive either because he just went from a 2-horse race to a 3-horse race. I don't see it.
I mean, it was more obvious who was going to come out ahead in the horse race here, but
sure,
it is. There's an extra guy, but you've got a 5-star and a 4-star down there, and it's actually the 4-star guy who I think is thought to be the front runner for the job. And there's no guarantees that Tyler Buchner is going to go down there and win the job.
No,
and
not at all.
Like what happens for Tyler Buchner if he goes down there and he doesn't win the job?
Right.
Like
that's the thing.
What's that going to look like?
See, that's the thing for him. He's taking a huge risk going to Alabama because if he stays at Notre Dame, he's going to sit this year. Maybe they bring him in for a package here and there, but he's going to sit this year. You're almost guaranteed to be the starter going into 24. Almost guaranteed. And he's leaving that on the table because if he loses the job at Alabama, he's not starting in 24 because both of those guys are young guys down there.
Yeah. He's going to have to transfer again.
Yeah. I just don't see the positives for him outside of the fact that he's reuniting with Reese and, all of that, which is great. But I don't see it. I just don't see it.
There was a theory floated out a week or so ago. I can't remember who I saw kind of bouncing this around that what if Buchner transfers for a year and then came back to Notre Dame next year? If he doesn't win the job, now I'm not saying it would happen, but if he doesn't win the job, I think he's got to at least be looking at the portal, whether it's back to Notre Dame or not.
Oh my gosh, yes. And if I'm Notre Dame, I'm sorry, I'm bringing him back. I would bring him back. And I know that's going to piss off a lot of people, and that's okay. I would bring him back because he will never be a culture killer. That's not who he is.
Yeah.
You can bring him back and the locker room is going to be just fine. And I think he would be welcomed back by a lot of these guys as well, to be honest with you. So I would bring him back in a heartbeat, in an absolute heartbeat.
It would be very interesting.
It would be. I don't see that ever happening. I'll be real honest with you. I do not see that being the case. But I would welcome him with open arms if he wanted to come back. I would.
Chi-Town wants to know if we have any homer takes on Notre Dame athletics.
I mean, it probably would be a homer take. I know we've got a question in there about the baseball team. It would probably be a homer take to say that they're going to get into the, postseason. I'm not the ACC tournament, obviously, but the NCAA tournament. I think that would probably be a homer take at this point. I think they've shown some flashes. I think they're starting to get their sea legs a little bit. Taking 2 out of 3 from Florida State was friggin' awesome, especially with their old coach coming back. I think that was really, really cool. But they're on the bubble right now, on the outside looking in, probably, and so I think that would be a homer take. I'm trying to think of anything else athletics wise.
I think they're in good shape if they take care of business. If they take care of the business, that they'll be challenged by North Carolina State this weekend, and then they finish ACC play against Boston College after finals out at Boston. And by the way, did you know they're playing a game at Fenway Park?
I did, and they're playing at Wrigley and Fenway in a week, in a less than a week span.
Think about that.
That's awesome.
I know.
That is freaking awesome.
Big time.
I love it. And these are days where I wish that I could just drop everything and follow the team and go. That would be
exactly.
That would be awesome. Baseball question here though from Tommy Guns: why does college baseball begin and end so early? Because school ends. I mean, that's really why it has to be within the school year.
Yeah.
At least.
I mean, the College World Series goes until the end of June.
Right.
So, like, if you, and, you know, there's a great divide in college baseball between the northern teams and the southern teams. And the
Yes,
fact
there
is the
is.
southern teams don't care about what the northern teams have to go through to try to
No.
get ready for a baseball season.
No.
Because all the, you know, the SEC obviously and the ACC and the Pac-12 and the Big 12 to a large extent as well, they're all pretty much warm weather, you know, schools. Yep. And they don't care about what these teams up north have to go through. And, you know, the other part of it is TV as well. Like if you were to push the season back another month, so you started in the middle of March instead of February, then you're going into July. But ESPN, as the television partner, likes the College World Series where it is at in June, because then, you know, you've got your NBA finals and your rapid, you know, all these different things that are going on. There's a lot of, you know, soccer World Cup and, you know, FIFAs and, you know, all those different things that start going on in July. And so they like the College World Series where it is ending, you know, at the end of June rather than bleeding all the way through July.
Yeah, I mean, high school baseball is almost the exact same. They start at the middle of March and they go until the middle of June, and because it has to be connected to the school year somehow. You know, you can't really be playing in the summertime. You know, these guys do have to get home and do their thing and whatever. But yeah, so I mean, I really like the College World Series where it is and the playoffs being in June, because June you kind of hit like with as far as like Major League Baseball. You know, you kind of hit the June, July, like, you know, doldrum kind of, you know, it's nice to have something on the line. And I love watching the College World Series. Absolutely love it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, so Benjamin and Anthony both had Notre Dame baseball questions like you were referencing. He said, what happened to Florida State this year? They just do not have a very good roster at all. And I will say that I'm surprised that it's, you know, taken Link Jarrett a little bit longer to turn that around. They're sub 500, that it's taken them, you know, him longer to turn that around than it took him to turn Notre Dame around up here. But on the subject of Notre Dame baseball, we're going to have a guest tomorrow. Brooks Coatsy, outfielder for the Notre Dame baseball team, is going to be on the show tomorrow night. So get to hear a little bit, some of his thoughts about last year's College World Series and super regionals the last couple of years. And he'll, you know, we'll talk a little bit about, you know, winning that Florida State series. And I actually interviewed him today because of his schedule, because they're playing on a Thursday tomorrow because of finals and all that stuff next week. So they're playing tomorrow. So we recorded it today. We'll talk a little bit about Link Jarrett and the differences between Jarrett and Stifler and all that kind of good stuff. So
that should be fun. I've actually there was I watched a couple of the games. It was about a week and a half ago. Watched 2 games. It was a doubleheader, and I didn't have anything going on a Sunday, and it was awesome. I just sat and watched Notre Dame baseball all day. It was really fun to watch. Like, this team plays hard. I do enjoy watching this team play. I really do.
Yep, for sure.
Is it a homer take to say that the women are going to make the women's basketball team are going to make it to the Final Four next year?
Yeah, I mean,
that's pretty good about that.
That's like my other one, I guess. I'm still riding or dying, I guess, on that one, that the women are going to be in the Final Four next year. Absolutely. I can't go too far with the Notre Dame men just yet. There's not enough of a roster.
Don't know enough about them even to say, like, it would be a homer take to say that they're going to be over 500. Like, that would be a huge homer take right now, and we just don't know enough about them to even go down that road.
Speaking of which, Michael wants to know any Notre Dame men's and women's basketball recruiting in portal. Well, I think Michael is probably getting in a little bit late, but we started off the show talking about the fact that the Notre Dame men got another commitment today from Logan Imes, combo guard out of Zionsville, Indiana. He's 6'4", so third commit in as many days for Micah Shrewsbury. They got a power forward yesterday, and of course they got Shrewsbury's son, who's another guard, earlier this week. So they've got those 3, and Imes and Kerry Booth is the forward. They were both committed to Shrewsbury at Penn State, and they had signed at Penn State. They decommitted there. They, were released from their NLIs, and they've now signed with Notre Dame. So you combine those three along with Marcus Burton, the local Penn, Indiana, Mr. Basketball guard. Women, it's been pretty quiet. I'm still thinking. I'm still looking at them eyeing a forward themselves, but it's been pretty quiet so far. Still waiting to hear something along those lines. But shaping up pretty good for the men. I just think that it's going to be a little bit. It's going to be a longer road. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Well, Vince, with that, let's just jump into rapid fire. What do you think?
Let's go, baby. Because there's some stuff we were holding out on because we were going to hit it in rapid fire. So
yes, exactly. We've got a Chi-Town question. We've got another question that we're definitely going to hit in rapid fire. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you think Logan Diggs actually benefits by transferring?
1, because that's the lowest I can go, because it's 1 to 10. I know that he's going to benefit mentally from not being at Notre Dame, because I just don't think he ever felt comfortable here at Notre Dame. So I think he'll benefit mentally. From a football standpoint, I just don't see it. He was over 1,000 yards of all-purpose yards last year in a 1A, 1B situation with Audric Estime. It was going to be the very same situation this year. He's going to be over 1,000 yards again. Great opportunity to then enter the NFL draft on a team that wins 10, 11, 12 games, whatever. He has over 1,000 yards. He's a big part of that offense, which could be a record-setting offense at Notre Dame. I'm not saying record-setting in the NCAA, but record-setting at Notre Dame. It could be. To go where? To do what? Like, you're not going to get – are you going to get more carries someplace else? I think that's detrimental to him down the line, because – we all know that running backs, you have X amount of carries in your legs, whatever that number is, right? Your guy down in Cowboys land, I think, is a great example of that, right?
Zeke Elliott.
Elliott. You've got X amount of carries. You going to use them up in college, or do you want to use them up in the NFL?
Yep.
I just don't think this is a great move for him.
I don't either, because making this move has to be with an eye on what's going to happen in the NFL draft. And I'm sorry, Logan Diggs is a nice college running back. I think, he should be a guy who's going to be on a roster in the NFL, but I don't see him turning into a first-round draft pick. No. Whether he goes to, LSU or, a high-profile program or a smaller program where maybe he gets more carries. I just don't see it. And I completely agree with what you just said about the carries. Like, it's actually more beneficial to him to be splitting carries with Audric Estime or whoever else here at Notre Dame, because scouts can still see your talent, whether you're splitting talent or carries or not. Like, think about that Georgia backfield a couple years back with Chubb and I can't think of the other guy's name now.
Sony Michel?
Michel, yeah. Yep. Yeah. Sony, that's exactly I was about to say. The guy who ended up with the Rams and was the Patriots and all that. Yeah, like when they were there, look at them. They're both in the NFL, and I just don't see. I think for this to truly pay off the way Logan Diggs thinks it's going to pay off, he's going to have to be a first or second round guy. And I just don't see that happening.
I don't either. And he wants more carries. I just don't see that being beneficial to him. I think that's going to wear on him. I think it's, bigger chance to get hurt. I don't see it. I don't either. So it's funny that I had this on the list, and Chi-Town asked almost the exact same question in the chat earlier, and we had it start up. Notre Dame currently has 3 open scholarships. So what positions are you filling with those 3 scholarships? And we have other people asking specifically, like I think there was another question that just popped in, are they looking for a running back in the transfer portal? So what do you think about this, Vince? I would say safety, obviously. I mean, that's a no-brainer. That is number one.
Agree on that. Yeah.
And I would even, if there's 2, I might even get 2, to be honest with you. After that, I think is where it gets very interesting. We talked about this a while back when we first talked about Buckner transferring. It would have to meet some very specific criteria to waste one on a quarterback.
Yeah.
But I think that's one I would explore. A graduate who has 2 years of eligibility left, somebody that may be able to be because I do think that they need to get one next year for sure for 24. So maybe you get that guy this year. He has a year to learn, a year to be that backup, and then he takes over next year, and then he's the bridge to either Kenny Minchey or CJ Carr. I think that's an absolute possibility. So if you can find a guy, like I said, he needs to check some very specific boxes because you're not coming in to challenge Sam Hartman. You're not. He's the starter. And the guy that comes in would need to understand that, right? Yeah. So he would have to check some very specific boxes. The other one I wrote down was, if a top-notch tight end, maybe, just to kind of strengthen that room a little bit, just because of all the injuries. I think there's a ton of talent there, but just another
It's amazing
body.
How much these backup guys have been hurt behind Michael Mayer the last couple of years.
Yes, a ton. So I maybe tight end, and then look, if you can find, this will never happen because these guys don't hit the portal. You can find like a 350-pound nose tackle who just can eat up some space. That kind
I was
of
thinking
thing.
about that as well. Like
you go that route.
Would you want a nose? Yeah,
but those guys just don't show up in the portal. Like that's just not really a thing. But those are the ones that I wrote down. Michael Johnson says safety, kicker, and a tight end. They have a kicker coming in.
Yeah, I was going to say, I saw that. Remember, they've got a kicker coming in this summer.
And a punter as well. So, yeah. I mean, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said. I think we all know that it needs to be safety. It's a matter of how many safeties are you taking? Are you just taking one? Are you taking two? Do you want a little bit more depth? Probably couldn't go wrong. Although they can obviously create some depth just by moving a guy or two if that's what they want to do. And that's kind of, because then, you do have to start looking, the more guys you bring in, then you've got guys on your roster already. What are those opportunities going to look like? Are you going to upset the apple cart in those? You definitely have to do what's going to be best for your team. Like, ideally, you'd like another running back, but I just can't see being able to bring a guy in who's really going to really compete for time. Like if you felt like Jadarian Price, like if you felt like, man, this is really going to be questionable if he's going to be healthy in time and that kind of stuff, then you probably look at that a little bit closer.
But if you think everybody's healthy, everybody's healthy in that running back room, you're not bringing anybody else in.
Right. Wide receiver's an intriguing one because, again, it's just like a bodies thing at this point. And maybe would you want a little bit more experience? But it just seems like there's so much good stuff going on in that receiver room that I don't think I'd want to add another one this year, especially since you're bringing in another freshman this summer. So I agree. Like, safety, quarterback, the top two, and then there are just like, it's a matter of maybe who the available guy is at some of those other positions that you want to address. But yeah, nose, tight end, receiver, running back, those are all potentials, but I think it depends on who they are.
Yes, and that's a big one because, like, wide receiver, for example, they've got 9, right? And I think ideally you want 10. So is that a possibility? But they're recruiting. They've got 3 commitments in the 24 class.
Yeah.
And you're losing no one from the wide receiver room except I take it back. You're going to lose Chris Tyree. You lose him, right? And he's one of the 9. But you're gaining 3. So then you're going to be at 11 if you don't bring anybody in, right? So I think you have to be careful. Is it just a 1-year rental? Is he somebody that's actually going to push for playing time with the way that these true freshmen are playing? It's going to have to be the right fit. Otherwise, 9, you're fine with 9. You're fine with 9. So I think that would be interesting. It had to be somebody because, I mean, look, let's be honest. Caleb Smith isn't going to play at Notre Dame because he was getting passed up. Like, I don't think he was going to get a lot of playing time think that's one of the reasons he hung it up. I'm sure there's actual injury issues and all of that. I'm sure. But you don't think Notre Dame took a look at his medicals before he came to campus? Like, he was getting passed up.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
You know?
I think the writing was on the wall.
Right.
So Tommy wants to know, he was asking earlier about, you remember when we were having a contest to try to figure out the name of the Friday show, and someone was donating a picture and all that stuff. So he wants to know what happened, Vince. Do you know,
I'm curious.
Do you know the story of this?
I don't.
I don't have a clue.
I don't know the story.
I think it kind of died with the fact that we couldn't come to a consensus on a different name than what we have. And so I don't think that we ever got that painting from anyone that I know of anyway.
Yeah, I thought.
Because a guy was going to donate it. Remember?
Didn't Jesse have it in his possession?
I don't think so.
No? Okay.
I'll have to ask him. But
yeah, I never did.
Yeah.
I know I never had it. So
I never did.
I don't know, man. I think we just screwed you guys. I think that's really what happened. I think we didn't follow through.
Mm-hmm. So the college football playoff has released the schedules for the first two 12-team expanded playoffs in 2024 and 2025. So here's how it's going to work. In the first round, one game will be played on campus sites. This is next year on December 20th. And then 3 games will be played the following day. That's the first round. And they're all on campus sites. So you've got one game the first day, 3 games the next day. The quarterfinals are going to be the same thing. New Year's Eve, there'll be 1 game. And then on New Year's Day, there'll be a triple header. 3 college football playoff games in the quarterfinals. Semifinals are Thursday, January 9th, and the national championship game will be on a Monday, January 20th. So it's going to extend all the way to January 20th for the national championship. But let me ask you, in 2025 is going to be the same thing. You know, the dates will be a little bit different, obviously, with those first round and quarter. Yeah. But
the same distance and all that.
Exactly. Stuff. Exactly. Right. The triple header quarterfinals, triple header on New Year's Day. So what do you think about having 3 games, 3 playoff games New Year's Day, as opposed to spreading out these big bowls like they have done, you know, with the orange and the cotton and the, you know, like non-playoff, but New Year's 6. What do you think about them playing these triple headers on New Year's Day like this?
Freaking love it. We're back to New Year's Day and it matters.
Old school, baby.
Yeah, I love it. I absolutely love it. I love the fact that there's going to be games before Christmas that I give a crap about. I think that's awesome, to be honest with you, because there's that lull from the end of the season. You know, you always kind of have like the Army-Navy game. Okay. You've got not a whole lot after Thanksgiving, right? I mean, I guess the week after Thanksgiving is the conference championships. So that's a good weekend. But from that point until New Year's, you got nothing, really. You got, you know, if you follow a small school, okay, awesome, great. But you really got nothing. Games that matter on the 20th and the 21st. Yeah. Yes, please. Love
Bring
that.
it on, baby. I can't
love
believe
it.
I'm seeing some of the comments in the chat. People are hating this whole thing. Like,
really?
I don't understand what's to hate about this. It's football games that matter rather than a bunch of meaningless games. And especially on New Year's Day, like I just remember back, you know, like college and around that time, and even before that, you know, back into high school, it's like, you know, like New Year's Day was just chock full from the time you woke up until the time you went to bed at night, and the Orange Bowl and the Rose Bowl, you know, like the whole thing.
Yes.
It's like, give it to me. Bring on game. And like, that's what I didn't like about the way they had set up these New Year's 6. It's like, okay, you know, you play all these games and then you play a couple playoff games. And then 2 days later, you've got, you know, like the Sugar Bowl or whatever. It's like, you're still playing that game afterwards. Like, now you're going to have 3 meaningful games back to back to back on New Year's Day. I love it. Totally love
awesome. It. And from a standpoint that if the team that I cover is in these games, it's going to be so much fun. It's going to be so much fun going to these games and the atmosphere around these games and all, like going to Notre Dame Stadium on the 20th of December. And my hope is that it's a Southern team that has to come up here. It's going to be awesome. It is going to be friggin' awesome.
Now, a follow-up of sorts that DT Rollhunter had in there earlier, I wanted to kind of piggyback that with this. Do you think the prolonged playoff game series will decrease fan attendance for the title game? 3 rounds is a lot to pay for. Do you think the title game will be the new Super Bowl?
Now that part I do think is a possibility. Like I think that you might not see as many quote unquote fans, and it might become a little bit more corporate. I could definitely see that being the case because it is a lot. It is a lot to ask a fan to potentially go to 4 games, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's a lot. So I could see that being a problem. Now I don't think that they'll ever not sell out, but I will also say I went to the Fiesta Bowl, right? The Jack Cone Fiesta Bowl. The stadium was like 3/4 full. Like it was a lot less full than I thought it was going to be.
But it also wasn't a playoff game.
Agreed.
And that's what we're going to have to find out in this, because
right.
even though you're adding more rounds and more games, as they say, to go to, they also count more for something.
They mean more.
Exactly.
And so I think you're not going to have as much of an issue selling out. I really don't. I think you're going to get more attendance in these Fiesta Bowls and Cotton Bowls, and I think you are going to get more attendance in those. Now, once the field starts to narrow and all of that, it may be a little bit. It may become more corporate for the national championship.
And that's what, like, seeing that last sentence, will it become the new Super Bowl? I can definitely see, like, even if the fans don't go, they'll find a way. Like you said, there are plenty of high rollers who want those tickets.
Yep.
And it could become a lot more corporate. It's like corporations, whoever companies buy up these tickets and give them to clients and whatever else. Okay.
Sure.
Nobody's going to care as long as there are booties in the seats.
Exactly.
That's what it's going to come
exactly.
down to. I will be curious to see what that looks like.
Yeah.
Though, because
it makes these New Year's 6 games relevant again.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest.
You have to decide. Some people are going to say, like your Georgia and Alabama people, I'm sure are going to say, well, we're not going to go to those first couple games. We'll just wait for the semifinals and the championship and that kind of stuff. But yeah, it will, to Jason's point, it'll be sold out one way or the other. It's just a matter of what kind of fan is sitting in the seats, I think.
Yep.
So ESPN executive Seth Markman says NFL draft guru Mel Kiper Jr. belongs in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Do you buy it or do you sell it?
That's a huge buy. I mean, it's a huge buy. He has reinvented what the draft is. And I realize a lot of that has to do with, the TV and marketing and all of that. But with his mock drafts and, all the stuff that he was doing, everything piggyback off of that. I
trailblazer.
Yeah, 100%. He revolutionized the draft and made it important. And now it's an event. I mean, you saw how many people were at the draft in Kansas City this past week. It's hundreds of thousands of people. Yeah. Like, it is an event. And yes, 100% he belongs in the Hall of Fame. 100%.
I couldn't agree more. The guy's been doing it for 40 years, and he essentially created this position. There's a reason that Bill Tobin was like, who the hell is Mel Kiper anyway? That whole
I've seen that clip.
At that point, he was still relatively new to this. And he obviously, as Tobin pointed out, hadn't played and all those different things. But, I guess like when Kiper was still in high school, he went to Ernie Accorsi, who was the general manager of the Baltimore Colts. And like he had showed him, all of his draft scouting stuff. And of course he was like, you should try to make a career out of this. And here he is. And now you've got, literally hundreds and thousands of people copying him. And they obviously have a media wing of all the halls of fame. So absolutely Mel Kiper Jr. should be there. There's no reason that he shouldn't be. And it's like, when you think about it, 40 years down the road, it's kind of surprising that there hasn't kind of been a push before this.
Agreed. Absolutely agree. I'm surprised it hasn't happened before this. I mean, when I sat down and thought about it, I was like, wow, yeah, he's not in the Hall of Fame, is he? Like, some guys get in the Hall of Fame with a lot less of a resume than what Mel Kiper has.
Yeah.
Off the field. The field. Exactly. Like owners and things like that. Mm-hmm. Like, he had just as much influence on what the NFL is today than some of the owners that are already in there.
Yeah. I mean, literally, like when he started doing this, you had maybe a couple other people, like Dr. Z with Sports Illustrated. He was doing some draft stuff, and like guys at the Sporting News and stuff like that. But there were very few, and that was back when the NFL, like they were still doing it like in one room, and it wasn't
Yes.
nearly the production that
Oh,
it is now.
it was in like a meeting room in a hotel. I mean, that's basically what it was,
Yep. DT says draft wouldn't be what it is without him. I agree. Fill in the blank. It's blank that a little league in New Jersey has implemented a new rule that a parent who argues with an umpire during a game has to volunteer to be an umpire for 3 games before being allowed back as a spectator.
I love this rule. I love it. Now, you might get somebody that's not very good at it, obviously, who doesn't have the training or know the rules. And so you do have to kind of balance that out. But it is little league. And so it's not as big of a deal as like a high school game. But these little league umpires get way too much crap, frankly. Okay. Like,
especially today, like when you see some of these extreme things that are going on, when people share the videos and stuff like that.
I love the fact that they're going to be putting people in this position because they need to know what it feels like to be back there calling balls and strikes and what it's like. I mean, I used to umpire like my little brother's games. Like that's what little league, you know what I mean? Like you're a player, the rules, like get back there. You know what I mean? I think it would be nice to see some parents have to do that. I think it's fantastic.
Absolutely. And, I'm not going to say that I was always a saint when it came to umpires, but Little League, definitely. I was not like the parent that was piping up at Little League games. Let's put it that way.
It's terrible.
And you just, some of the stuff that you hear is just crazy. And I do like a few years ago, I umpired behind the plate. Remember when the football team used to play the local law enforcement agencies down at Four Winds Field in the charity softball game? Yeah. So it was like me and a couple other local media people. I think it was like Pete Byrne and Allison Hayes from the TV stations. And I had told them when they asked me if I would be, because they were asking, media people, to be a guest umpire. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't want to do home plate. And so what did I get stuck with? Home plate.
From that three,
neither one of the other two wanted to do home plate.
Exactly.
So I got home plate.
Yeah.
And it is definitely a different now softball's a different perspective anyway, because it's like lobbing in there and that's like a fun game. I've got like Chip Long, who's got his mock turtleneck and he's like staring me down from that was, when he was doing it, but it was like he was the most intense of the whole crew. There were some cops that were pretty intense out there.
I bet they were.
But yeah, that's it was actually kind of fun, like when some of these other guys would get a little bit more intense. I joke with some of the football players and stuff like that. It's like, geez, come on. It's a charity softball game. But you do get a different perspective when you have to do that.
Yeah,
you definitely get a different. And I think that especially, for some of those parents who go overboard like that, I think it's the perfect rule.
Yeah, I do too.
Either that or just ban them, lifetime ban.
Put your money where your mouth is. Like you want to speak up, here's the equipment. Have some fun.
Yep. So we recently talked about the movie Gladiator, and a sequel is in the works. Scale of 1 to 10. How hopeful are you that the sequel will match the quality of the original?
Again, a 1. I have look, Gladiator, in my opinion, is one of the best, and I will call it a sports movie out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what we talked about, whether or not it was a sports movie.
It is, number 1. Number 2, it's one of the just the pageantry of it. Back then, like the special effects were really, really good. Okay. Like recreating the Coliseum and all of that. And the storyline was good. And look, Russell Crowe's an old man. He's dead in the movie, so you can't bring him back. So I have a hard time with you just can't do a sequel of a really, really good movie like this. You just can't do it. Like Top Gun sequel worked because Tom Cruise is still around. Gladiator sequel's not going to work because Maximus is dead.
Yes,
Like,
Maximus died in the first one.
yeah.
And, if they were going to bring Russell Crowe back, he would have to lose like 80 pounds, I
Well,
think.
there's that too. There's that
Like,
too.
yeah. But I did see that they're bringing back Connie Nielsen, who played Joaquin Phoenix's sister, the sister.
Okay.
And there's a few others who are going to be in there. Pedro Pascal was not in the original, but like he's kind of, he was in Game of Thrones. He's the guy
Okay.
who's in The Last of Us. He was, big hit, just a couple of months ago on HBO. And I think he's on another one of the like Mandalorian or something like that, I think. So he's kind of the big name right now, like the hot name attached to it. But I agree. Like mine, we saw some variations there. And I don't think Ridley Scott's going to be directing it. Would be my guess. I don't know. I would, like you said, I would want to see Maximus / Russell Crowe, and we're talking about almost 25 years down the road at this point, and the character died. So I just don't know.
I don't know how you can
rewrite
that. I don't know how you can rewrite that and bring him back. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Unless you're making him CGI and he is, younger.
Well, and I'm not even saying that Maximus needed to be out there fighting, right? Because when he killed the Emperor, he was supposed to take over. So he could just be back as the Emperor. You know, like right. I would be okay with that, but I don't know how you reverse the fact that he's dead. Like that's
right.
That's the problem. If they would have left it as like a cliffhanger, okay. Right? Now, I will also say Irish Chi-Town, a prequel could be interesting. And that one would be very interesting because the guy who bought Maximus was a gladiator before. And remember, he won his freedom and all of that. Like, tell his story.
And I could
get on board with.
And I haven't seen like what the storyline is going to be, but like I could see Pedro Pascal potentially being that guy, because that guy was, I can't remember if he was supposed to be, like they called Russell Crowe the Spaniard, which was, a bit of a stretch to begin with, but it seemed like that guy was more, kind of had a maybe Spanish, lineage or something like that.
Because he gave him that gear, he gave him that armor.
Right.
But then they had that scene where he talked about how, he was the one that gave him his freedom. And, he's like, you never met the Emperor. He's like, I never said I met the Emperor. I said he touched me once on the shoulder. Right.
And that's a good Father David up on his gladiator. That actor did die during the filming. But I mean, if it's a prequel, you're having a different actor do it anyway. So, because like to your point, like it would be probably set like 15 or 20 or 25 years beforehand, like when that guy was younger and he was the gladiator, I think is what you were saying.
I think that I could get on board with that. Now, I don't know, like you said, I don't know what I believe the little boy who is the woman's son, I believe it's going to center around him. From what I think I read, he's involved. He's somehow involved. So,
and that would make sense because, like I said, she's back in it.
So his mom,
the sister,
So his mom is in it. That would make sense. I believe it's centered around him. Maybe he's the new emperor. I don't know, but I believe it's centered around him. But either way, you're messing with a classic, man.
Yeah, I know.
Let's have some original ideas, people.
Yeah. Well, and Jesse and I talked yesterday. I don't know if you saw that Vince Vaughn is working on the Dodgeball sequel 20 years later.
But that's like a goofy comedy. Like you can go back and have some fun with that. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth on that one, but like I'm okay with the Dodgeball sequel because it's a
But
goofy
I still
comedy.
wonder where that's going to go 20 years later. Like what's like does Vince still own Average Joe's or like it's going to be very interesting.
Yes.
It's going to be we'll probably end up seeing both of them. How hopeful I am.
Oh, I'm sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, we'll definitely go see both of them for sure.
Yep. All right. Well, that's going to do it for tonight. Appreciate you joining us here this evening. Vince, enjoyed it as always.
Yeah, baby.
And of course, hit the like button on your way out if you have not done so already. And the reminder to subscribe, rate, and review. We'll be back tomorrow. And again, we'll have Notre Dame baseball player Brooks Coatsy with us. And Jesse and I will have some rapid fire as well on tomorrow's show. So we've got all that coming up for you tomorrow. And then I think it'll be the first time in like 3 weeks that the three of us are together for the Friday rapid fire.
I think you're absolutely right about that. So that'll be fun. I miss the three of us going back and forth. That'd be good.
I know, for sure. All right, we will talk to you then. IB Nation Sports Talk.